Welcome to part 2 of my monthly Hero December 2017 kit. In our previous video we did our panels and now we're going to go right into making our cards. I'm going to go into the figures that I colored and I cut with the corresponding dies. We have the camel, the vases, the lanterns, the Arabian man and the Arabian woman, as well as the pillows. And of course we have the carpets, which did not have a corresponding die, so I fuss cut them. Next I'm going to show you the windows I cut out with the window die set. I needed a copper one as well as a silver one. They were a little difficult to cut on my color bug. I actually had to make a new combo of my layers just so they would cut cleanly. I ended up using my B's, my embossing mat, and my A. Next, starting card number 1. I cut out the outer layer of the window die out of some beautiful Moroccan field paper. That's going to go right on top of one of my sunset panels that I made the window figure for. So now I figured I'd start with doing the palm trees. So I made some pencil marks so that way I had a guide of where to put my stamp. I'm going to start with the small palm trees that came with the kit. I wanted to make it look like it was looking out in the desert. As you see, I also have a large palm tree, which I'm going to use in a little bit. So I have it stuck to the top of my Stamp Perfect, that way I remember where it is. I like doing that sometimes when I'm doing double layered stamps, or if I want to have more than one stamp, that way I can easily find it. I did a couple layers of the black Memento tuxedo black on the smalls. Now I was trying to figure if I want a kitty corner or just straight, but I decided let's go straight up with that large palm tree. And just like that one, I did a couple layers of it. That way I could make sure it was very black. The top of the palm tree for some reason didn't want to come out as black as I wanted it to, so I kept on going for that top until I got it to exactly the color I wanted. As you see, it's going to look really gorgeous with that die on top of it. So I put some adhesive on the back of that panel with the window cut out, and I stuck it to my panel. I also had to trim a little excess because apparently I was a little over. Next, I'm going to use some of my multi-medium matte, Ranger multi-medium matte to glue the window to the thing, to the panel. I really do love this. This glue, it's fantastic. It holds a lot of things from sequins to enamel dots, you name it, it holds. So I end up putting my Stamp Perfect over it just to hold it down. So now we're going to making the panel onto the card. So I am putting some craft foam on the back of my panel. I always like to elevate my cards so they actually pop. And craft foam is the best way. It doesn't get crunched in the mail. It stays consistent. And it doesn't warp the card. And sometimes when you have watercolor paper too, it really holds it down. So now I am doing the inside of my card. I usually always do the insides of my cards before I stick the panel on. I've learned from many of the mistakes, do not do it after you stick your panel on your card form because you end up having this wonderful uneven inking. And as you see, I put I Will Never Desert You, that came with the kit, and that is in Potter's Clay in Memento. Now I am doing the sentiment on the front. And I'm going to do that in the Hero Art Silver. I actually got this silver from a previous kit, and it's very nice. It has a nice metallic feel. And I put Another Day in Paradise. So now I'm sticking my panel onto my card form. And I am going to take my paper trimmer and I am going to cut down my black cardstock sentiment into a thinner flag. And then I'm going to just snip the end. Take some foam tape and stick it to the foam tape to give it just a little pop as it comes up on the top of that card. I do love putting sentiments on black, it just makes it pop. And that is card number 1. But I decided also to add one of the little gems that came with the kit. Oh, a little gold triangle would really make it pop more. And as you see, that's card number 1. Now on to card number 2. For this one, I decided to do a silhouette scene. So I fussy cut some sand dunes out of black cardstock. And I chose the line of camel stamp that came with a kit. And I am going to line up the stamp with the sand dune. That way it's a perfect match. And I'm going to stamp these on with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm going to have to do this a couple times because honestly, when you're stamping on watercolor paper, it sometimes takes anywhere from 3 to 4 stamps to actually get into all the grooves that are in the paper. Now that I've got them where I like them, I'm going to adhere my sand dunes to the card panel. And of course I probably didn't line it up as much as I wanted to, so I am going to cut off any excess I have. And here I am remeasuring my craft foam just to make sure I didn't need to trim any. One trick too when you're putting a card like this on black cardstock is to go over your edges with a marker or your ink. That way you don't have that drastic white edge against your card form. Now I'm going to stamp. I crossed the Sahara for you in black ink, which is going to be my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And once again, I'm going to go over this a couple times. I'm going to keep this card very simple as I put it together. I wanted the sunset to be the showcase of it. Here I am putting on my craft panel and getting it ready to adhere to my card form, which I have a black cardstock card form. And the sentiment I will put in later, and that will be card number 2. Alright, for card number 3, I am taking that kind of galaxy look portrait panel I did, but first I'm going to add some sand dunes to some golden craft cardstock, and I'm stamping that in the Memento Black ink. And after that's dried up a little bit, I'm going to come in with my scissors and I'm going to fussy cut out the sand dune. Like I said in the previous video, the sand dunes also did not come out with a die. So you kind of have to fussy cut them or stamp them directly on and mask. And I'm going going to cut off any of the excess that I have off the panel. And now I'm going to 3D mount the camel onto the panel. I am using my Scotch mounting squares. I was buying them in the craft section. I actually found out it's cheaper to buy them in the hardware section. You get more in a pack, which is for like $1 more, and it's totally worth it because I end up using a lot of these. And I love them because I can cut them up into little pieces and put them in there, and they stick very well. And here I am mounting that, and now I'm going to just put my craft foam on the back of my card panel. You'll see me doing that a lot through all these videos because I believe every one I did, I end up doing that. And I'm pre-adhesiving that back so that it's ready. Now I'm going to do the sentiment inside the card. And like I said, doing it ahead is always better before you put the thing. Believe me, I've learned from trial and error. Don't put your panel on until you're done your sentiment. And for this one, I use, I believe it was the Paris Dusk Memento, and I said I would never desert you. Now for my sentiment in the front, I decided to take some more black cardstock. And I used my anti-static tool and my embossing ink. And I'm going to stamp that sentiment on the front of that black cardstock. And I'm going to use my Recollections White Snow embossing powder for this sentiment. And I'm going to heat set that. And of course I'd cross the Sahara for you since I have a desert scene plus the camel. And now I'm just trimming it with my paper cutter. I like this paper cutter for the trimming because I can see through the cutter part, so I can see exactly where I'm cutting. And now I'm going to adhere my panel to my card form. This one I'm also keeping really simple, though I do believe I probably will add some more embellishments later on. But for now, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And I'm going to 3D mount with some mounting tape that sentiment that I just cut sideways. And that will be card number 3. Now on to card number 4. I'm going to start by stamping some sand dunes on some Golden Craft in black tuxedo ink. And then I realized that I'm going to do a double sand dune for this one, so I had to stamp it one more time. And I didn't care if it was the whole sand dune, but because it doesn't matter to be partial or full. So I'm going to fussy cut out these sand dunes. And I'm going to put this over my sunset panel. And it actually, I found out that those sand dunes actually lined up really perfectly for this card. And I'm going to glue the second sand dune down with my Elmer's adhesive. And I'm going to trim off any excess on the edges of these cards. And then I'm going to take my magic carpet, or like I want to call it magic carpet, but my carpet, and I'm going to place it After I put the girl down, though, I did realize that I placed it just a little too high. So we're going to go a little bit closer to the sand dunes. And then I'm going to adhere her down. Now I'm going to get the Arabian man. And he's also going to get adhered down on the carpet. Now I'm going to put my craft foam on the back of my panel. And I'm going to put that panel aside. Now I'm going to do my sentiment inside. So for this, we're going to use the potter's clay. I put, "You are my oasis." I'm also going to do my sentiment on black cardstock for the front while I have my Stamp Perfect out. And for that one it said, I believe it's "Let's Fly Away." So I'm going to use my anti-static tool, my embossing ink, and I'm going to use my Recollections Snow embossing powder. Now I'm going to cut it with my paper cutter so that I have a nice thin strip. Make sure all sides are even. Now I'm going to stick my panel on the front of my card. And then I'm going to trim off part of my little sentiment. I did that in a fishtail design. And I'm just going to adhere it to the card. So now I'm trying to decide which gem I want to use. So I decided to use one of the little copper ovals that goes with the oranges in the card. And that would be the end of card number 4. And now we're going to begin on card number 5. So this one I'm going to stamp the sand dunes once again, this time on brown craft paper. And I'm going to use my Tuxedo Black ink by Memento. I'm just going to make sure I'm evenly coated on those sand dunes. And I'm going to fussy cut those out. And as I was lining it up, I realized I don't have enough sand dune to cover up the white on my panel. So taking a little of the leftover scrap I had from the first sand dune, I'm going to print out once again another sand dune. And I'm going to fussy cut that one out also. I decided, well, let's stagger them since I do end up having to do 2 instead of 1, and I didn't want to put them one on top of the other because I wanted to show the color in that sky. So I adhere the first one, and then I am going to line up the second one. I'm going to try to take as much of the white as I can off it. now I'm going to trim all excess off my card. Those sand dunes. And just like with the other one, I'm going to do When the Carpets Again with the Arabian guy and the Arabian woman. This one I had a little bit more Skyrim, so I didn't have to worry about bringing it down too far like I did before. I went a little too high. So I am adhering both of them to the card. And then to add something to it, I was going to try to use the gem stars, but I felt like they were too big. So instead, I got my Wow pen. It is like an embossing pad, except it's in a pen, and it's very fun because you can add little tiny elements or even fill in a bad embossing job with it. For this, I'm taking one of my, I believe it's vintage blue holographic glitter from Recollections. I'll have it listed in my supplies at the bottom of this video, but that way it gave it kind of like a Starry Night feel. And I heat emboss those on there. Now I'm going to adhere my craft foam to my card. And now to put the sentiment. This time I did Let's Fly Away, and I did that in my Paris Dusk. And I'm using a pattern paper. This pattern cardstock with a beautiful lattice look. And there is card number 5. Now on to card number 6. This one I'm going to take my silver window frame and I am going to stamp a sand dune scene. So first I am going to do my sand dune. For this one I want a scene behind it, so I took that little tent silhouette that came with the kit. And I want to stamp that on there too in the Memento Tuxedo Black. And to get good coverage, I went over it quite a few times because I wanted the silhouette to not show the sand dune behind it. I think I decided one more layer. Yep, there it is, one more layer. And then I decided, let's put the little camel too, the little lone camel. And that is perfect. Getting that one done. So I'm going to take out that sand dune. And I also decided I wanted to put some stars and a moon in the window panel. So I'm taking those little stamps, placing them in the window panel. And of course I had already cut out the window panel out of some pattern paper with the exterior part of that window die. And I'm stamping down those moon and stars with some embossing ink. And then I'm going to take my gold glitter embossing powder from Recollections, and I'm going to put it lightly on there. And I didn't really care if it really showed. I just wanted to show when we turned it. So I heat embossed that on there. So now I'm going to fussy cut my sand dune and trim it down as much as I can so it fits in the window, and adhere that to the little window frame and trim off all excess. And that is going to show beautifully with the little silhouette. The star and the moon actually really glitters very well in person. It doesn't show much on the window, on the video. As much as I tried to show it, it kind of hides. but in person it's very pretty. So I'm adhering the window panel background. Now I'm putting in the little window panel right on top. And getting all excess adhesive off it. And now I'm going to adhere my craft foam to the back of my card. I did warn you that we were going to do this quite often. So I also decided to put on a little bit of gray craft as well as the bases. And I also put Life as an Adventure in the potter's clay inside. On to card 7. For this one, I have my copper twine out that I actually got from Walmart. Their beading section. It's actually really pretty because it's got a little copper foil to it. And I'm going to take my little lanterns and I'm going to stick some of my Scotch mounting foam. I'm going to add a little adhesive and then put the mounting square on it just to give it a little bit of raise as well as to adhere it better to the string. And I'm going to do that about 6 times with each of the little lanterns. I thought these lanterns were very fun. And that's why I figured this panel would be really cute because it would show like a light behind it. One thing I like about the Scotch mounting foam is sometimes it's easy to cut along the square evenly because you have the grid marks that they have from their Scotch pattern, and it makes it really easy. Not to mention, I find that they stick the best out of all the mounting squares I checked, and they're just the right thickness. They're not too thick like some of the mounting tapes out there, and they're not too thinned like others out there. So they're the perfect thickness. So now I'm going to line these lanterns up on my panel. So I'm sticking down the lantern and then pulling up the string. And I'm going to stagger these lanterns so that they're not all in one length, just to add some dimension to the lanterns. And I was trying to stagger the colors too, because I didn't want too many greens together, or too many blues, and all the reds together. I just wanted to kind of make them go in different directions. Now, for the back of the card, I took my roller, and I did put 2 layers of the adhesive down. Here I am putting the first layer, and then I felt like it just wasn't sticking enough, so I went and took a second layer, just so I can get these strings to stick down. I'm going to also end up pulling in my regular old Scotch tape just to make sure the strings don't move. And I've been just taking little pieces of Scotch tape just to make sure they stay still, especially while I'm assembling this, that way they're not popping up. Sometimes some good old Scotch tape is a creator's tool just to keep things still. I often use it in the back of my ribbon and twine just to make sure the adhesive holds. Just make sure when you do buy Scotch tape that it is acid free, because you don't want your cards to get damaged. Most of it is nowadays. Now I'm going to trim off the excess twine that I had left over. And for this card, I was going to put my foam on the back, and I decided to just X-nay that because the strings were going to make it bumpy. So I decided instead to do my craft foam tape and just lay them in strips along the back of the card. And I'm going to prep this panel and then put it aside. Because I almost put it on there and I realized, wait a minute, I need to do my sentiment inside. So for this card, I actually brought in a stamp from a previous Hero Month kit. Shine Bright. It came from one, I believe it was the Sun and Moon kit. Or the Stars and Moon kit, and I brought in the Shine Bright. And I'm gonna grab some black craft paper, some black cardstock, and I'm going to put on my front sentiment. So first, use our anti-static tool. When you're heat embossing, I have to say the anti-static tool is a godsend. I don't know how many times I've had uneven embossing because it sticks to places where it wasn't supposed to stick. And of course I used the You Light Up the Night sentiment. And I did that in my Recollections Snow. I've actually really started to like the Recollections brand embossing powder because the price point. For $3.99 you get a big bottle of embossing powder. And it works just as good as some of the other brands. Now I'm going to get my paper trimmer and I am going to trim out this sentiment for the front. And for this one I decided I didn't want to tail the flag, I wanted to go all the way across the card. So I decided just trim it and then stick it on the panel. Then I decided let's do a little gem. I'm trying to decide if I wanted to go the gold or if I wanted to go the copper. And I decided the gold kind of went better. I was almost going to do the copper only because of copper twine. And that's the end of this card. For our next card, I am going to be, once again, stamping out the sand dunes, this time also on brown craft. And for this one, I used the Memento, I believe it's Rich Cocoa. And I am going to fussy cut out this sand dune. But then I realized, like I did with the other panel, that I can't cover the white up as much as I wanted to. So I decided I'm going to need to fussily cut and stamp one more sand dune. So here I am doing it once again. Sometimes when you first plan it, you're thinking, oh, I can get one sand dune in there. And then you realize, oh, this needs something extra. Luckily, it's easy to improvise, especially with this kit. I felt like the sand dunes, you could always add more. You could never add too many sand dunes. So I'm going to fussy cut out the second sand dune, and then I decided I wanted to leave one sand dune raised. So I adhered the first sand dune down along the top. And then for the second one, I took some foam mounting tape and I applied it to the second sand dune on both the top and the bottom. And that one is going to go right up below the first sand dunes. And I'm using my camel as a guide to see where I exactly want him to go and make sure he's going to fit. And now I am going to just position him in multiple places and see where I feel he's best. And I think I decided more towards the center for this one. And here I am again with the Scotch mounting squares. I'm cutting them into size so that I can actually use them on the die cut. Now I'm going to pull off the tape and adhere my camel to the location I decided on the card. And I was just trying to decide, do I want to stick them further back or not? And I went right back to where I was originally. Now I'm going to cut off all the excess of the sand dunes off the panel. Now I'm going to take some navy cardstock and I am going to put our front sentiment in white snow Recollections powder. And for this one I chose I Would Never Desert You. Also noticing when I do my heat embossing, I do my powder in coffee filters. That's a trick I've learned from Jennifer McGuire. Also, it does make it so much easier for cleanup to be able to just funnel it back into the bottles. And now I'm going to take my sentiment and I fishtailed it and attach it with mounting tape. And now I'm going to adhere my foam to the back of my card. I try to always match the colors on the card when I pick out a foam. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it isn't. Now I'm going to put in my inside sentiment inside the card. And I'd cross the Sahara for you in Paris dusk. Now I'm going to adhere my panel to my card. Sorry for the flickering lights. We were having a little storm and the lights were flickering. And for this I decided to take my silver and my gold stars that came with the kit and adhere it just for some dimension. And there's the end of card number 8. For card number 9, I'm going to start by putting Life as an Adventure on a kind of round doily medallion, and it's in the Paris dusk, and I also clear embossed over it just to give it some shine. I'm going to adhere this with foam tape over the top of my brightly stenciled panel. This card I'm going to try to keep really simple. I really liked the colors in it. I wanted the colors to be a focus, not people or sayings or shadows. So I took some basic white card form and I'm going to put in my sentiment inside. And I chose Another Day in Paradise, and I'm going to use the same Paris dusk ink to stamp that inside. Oh, I changed my mind. I decided I will never desert you instead. But still in the Paris does. So now I'm going to adhere my Craftbond panel to my card form. And then put on my center medallion. I really like this die. It leaves like a little half embossed trail around it, the circle, and it's really pretty if you have like a center medallion. Now I'm taking some of my multicolored embossed sequins. I actually have these on my store and they're very beautiful. They got a slight emboss, but they got a beautiful iridescent shine. And I also decided I wanted to put some along the little lattice on the stencil. So here I am putting some glue dots down. And in my little squirt bottle, I actually have my Ranger Multi-Medium. I like this little precision squirter for doing small dots, for like putting on sequins or so. And I am skipping a row as I go, just so that it's not on every spot on there. Don't mind my head as I'm blowing. I'm trying to stagger the colors. Like I said, these are a really nice iridescent sequin. When I saw them, I fell in love. I was like, oh my gosh, we need these for the shop. And they're actually perfect because they got that kind of same little Moroccan feel going on. And that's the end of card number 9. For card number 10, I am going to take one of my little watercolor stencil pattern that I do in my distress inks. And I'm going to adhere it to also to a white panel. And I got myself a beautiful little filigree die cut that I cut out in my metal die cut. And for this one, I decided to do Another Day in Paradise. Let me get the other stamp out of the way. And I did that in, I believe it was Bahama Blue. And I am doing the same thing. This time I'm making my card a landscape versus a portrait. And I'm going to stamp that also in the same blue. Now I'm going to adhere craft foam to the back of that thing, of that panel. And I'm going to adhere that panel to my card form. And it's just a basic white card form. Now I'm going to adhere with foam tape my center medallion, this time of course with the lace filigree. And I'm going to take the same sequins I used in the previous card and I'm going to add some to it just to give the card some sparkle. And I put Life is an Adventure, of course, in the same blue. And that's the end of card number 10. And now for our last card, card number 11. I am going to stamp with my Stamp Perfect the palm tree. First one I'm going to do in the rosebud. And then I'm also going to do one in the Memento Tangelo, as well as the Bahama Blue. And now I'm going to line up my die that came with the kit. And I'm going to cut those palm trees out. Now for my sentiment, I did a ombre effect where I did a mixture of the rosebud, Tangelo, and the Bahama Blue. And for that, I chose Another Day in Paradise. Now I'm going to stamp the inside of my card with the same effect. Just trying to flip my foam map inside just in case there was any residual ink. And there we go. I'm going to line up my sentiment. I always like doing this kind of ombre effect sometimes. It makes it really fun. Just always start with your lighter color. That way it doesn't contaminate your ink pad. And I chose for that one, You Are My Oasis. Now I am going to adhere my craft foam to my card panel. And I'm going to fiddle with laying out my trees. I tried quite a few little configurations till I found out the perfect layout. Now I'm going to adhere those palm trees to my card panel. As you can see, I used the same die for this card as I had chose for the previous card. And I'm going to actually adhere that with my Scotch mounting squares. I'm going to trim them in 4s, and I'm just going to lay them around the card medallion. Now I'm going to adhere the card panel to the card form before I put the medallion on. Now I'm going to use my liquid adhesive to adhere the same sequence I used in the last few cards. Like I said, these are available on our store, so check it out at monkeyspaperpalooza.com, as well as other gorgeous sequins. And that's the end of my last card. Now I just want to do a rundown of all the cards I made with the kit. Actually, I have to say the kit was really fun to use. I liked both the stencil, as you can tell by all the backgrounds, as well as the sentiments. They were really fun. And I found, of course, coloring the people and the camels and the lanterns went better with a thinner thing other than a Copic. Some people did Copic coloring and it came out beautiful. Mine just came out not so good. So I used, of course, watercolor pencils, and they gave them a really nice feel. All these cards will be available on our shop, so definitely check it out at Monkey's Paper Palooza. And I hope these cards help inspire you what you can do with the Hero Months kits. As of now, I do know this kit is still available. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.